So in this video, I want to talk about functions in Python. So first of all, I think you're all familiar with the concept of a function. So let's start by writing a function, and then I'll explain all the elements here. So it's going to be called SUMList, and it's going to sum up a list. Now, as it happens, if you just do sum of list, Python will do it. So we're writing something that Python actually would do for you in an easier way. But anyhow, so what they'll do is they'll say like for E and L. Here I'll say S is equal to 0, and here I'll say S plus equals E. And after that, I'll return S. So in order to use it, I'll have to define a list. So let me define a list called like my L or something, and let's say that it's like 2, 3, and 4. And then I can, for example, print SUMList my L, and what I'll get is the sum. So 2 plus 3 plus 4 would be 9. You can type it in, check that you would in fact get 9. So this thing you're already familiar with. So a function definition starts with def, that's the Python keyword. Then you have the name of a function. The convention is to write the name of a function in pothole case, just like names of variables. And in the parentheses is the parameter list. So in this case, there is just one parameter called L. So unlike in Java, you don't have to specify what the type of the parameter is. So you would just have to trust the user of the function. In this instance, there are ways to get around this, but here you are just trusting that the user will give you a list and not, for example, an integer, in which case things would break. So what happens when I call the function? So call is the technical term for basically using the function, right? So this is a call to the function, so it goes the name of the function and then a parameter, so my L in this instance. It so happens that this expression is contained within the call to print, but it doesn't have to be. So the important thing is this. And once you hit a return statement, whatever comes after the return statement, and in Python conventionally you would not enclose this in parentheses, that would be the value of this entire expression, right? So my L gets sent to L, then you do whatever it is with L being equal to my L, and then whatever is the value here, that's the value of this entire thing. So you would in some ways print this S, which happens to be the sum of the list L, right? So one more thing to mention, again, just like with if statements and stuff like that, the body of the function here, you know that it's the body of the function because it's indented, right? So you know that this is not part of the function SUMList because the level of indentation here is shifted again to the left. Okay, so that's your basic function. So next up, I want to do something about returns. So what happens if instead of doing this, you said something like return S over here? So the thing to know here is that once you hit the return statement, the function terminates, and whatever is the value here is going to be the value of this expression. It doesn't matter if you had something here. So let's say that here you had like, S is equal to 10, return S. If this happens, then this wouldn't matter. So the way it would work is, well, my L is still 2, 3, 4. My L gets sent to L, so now L is 2, 3, 4. And now you go S equals 0 for E and L. So at this point, S is equal to 0, E is equal to 2. So S becomes 2, and then you get to return S. S is 2, so this is 2. And that's it. This thing never happens. So, well, I mean, the upshot is you got to be careful in this kind of situation to place the return in the correct place, which is over here. In this instance, after the for loop has finished running, you've finished adding in everything into S. So next up, I want to show you one situation where this kind of thing that we saw before is actually useful. So I'm going to call the function search. And it's going to take two parameters, so L and E. And I'm going to write return true. And usually, so this is conventionally, so this is called a Docstring. It describes what the function does. It would conventionally be enclosed with a pair of 3 ticks, and this would be conventionally a verb in the imperative. So it says return true if. So if is a shorthand for if and only if the list L contains an element equal to. Okay, and if it's enclosed in this pair of triple quotes, Python, it doesn't quite ignore it, but basically it ignores it. So it's more like a comment. So conventionally, if you describe what the function does, this is how you would do it. This is called a Docstring. So okay, let me do it. So how would they do it? So I would say for an E is taken, so it's say LM in L. So the reason I'm saying LM before I said E is that if I had said E here, then this E, which is the thing that I want to look for in the list, would be overwritten, so I don't want that. And here I'll say if LM is equal to E, let's say return true. And over here I'll say return false. So how would they call it? Well, something like search myL and, for example, 3. So this should be true because myL does contain an element that's equal to 3. On the other hand, if I said like myL5, this should be false because myL does not contain 5. So let's say that it's 3. How would it work? So myL gets sent to L, 3 gets sent to E. This is just a string. I'm not looking, so this is just like a comment. So now I'm going for LM in L. So LM at first is going to be 2. Is 2 equal to 3? No, it's not, so we don't do this. Next up, LM becomes 3. Is 3 equal to 3? Because E is still 3, 3 gets sent to E, right? Yes, it is. So you hit return true, so the value of this becomes true. And that's it. We never get to the return false. When would we get to return false? Well, let's say that this is 10, in which case this would never be true. So you'll go through, well, is 2 equal to 10? No. Is 3 equal to 10? No. Is 4 equal to 10? No. Well, we get here and we return false. So it's this kind of trick where you know that if this loop ran its course, right, so you tried everything and it never returned true, well, you know that you got to return false because you checked every possible element for whether it's equal to 10 in this case. Turned out no, so you got to return false. And here you don't need to check anything because you know that this loop finished running, which means that you haven't found the element that's equal to the one that you're looking for. Okay, so that's kind of a common trick. So a common mistake here would be to do something like if LM equals E, return true, else return false. So it's worth pausing and figuring out why that is wrong. So, hello again. I hope you paused, or else knew right away what's wrong. So what happens here? Well, let's say that we tried with myL10. So myL234 gets sent to L, 10 gets sent to E. And now we are for LM in L, so LM is now 2, E is 10. Well, that's not true, so we're not returning true, but now you're saying else return false, and that's it. That's the last thing that would happen, so the value of this is going to be false, which in this case happens to be right, but suppose that you said 3. in this case, you'd also return false because the first element is not equal to 3. Because you would say like for lm and L, lm is 2, E is 3, so you're not returning true, so you return false because you have an else here. But you should have returned true. So that's a mistake. And the way to fix it is to just say, oh, I can only return false if I checked everything, and then I need to return false. I can't just return false straight away on the first iteration because the first element did not match with E. Okay, so a little bit of terminology. You don't really need to know this, but I'm using it all the time. So L and E are called parameters. The actual value, my L, the actual value 3, that's called an argument. So like the argument gets assigned to the parameter. One thing to note here, obviously kind of this should be in the correct order. So if this is L and this is E, you're kind of meaning that L is a list. You're using this fact here. You're saying for lm and L has got to be a list here, something like a list. So the order of the argument should be the same as the order of the parameters for things to work. And otherwise, so unlike in Java, if that's what you're familiar with, there's no explicit type checking. So you're just assuming that E is an integer.